Hey guys. So I felt a little tug to do this message, and I sort of, well, I don't know about resisted it, but I sort of basically, like, I kind of looked at it, and it was like, all right, like, is that just sort of an addiction to streaming thing? One, is it something external to me that's kind of pushing its way in, or like kind of, I don't know, whether it's V2K, what voice to skull technology, or just what Robert Bruce talks about in psychic self defense, where he says, you have a sense of what seems to be coming from you, thought wise or feeling wise, and then you could have a sense of. I think he was talking more about feelings. He's like, you could have a sense that a feeling is not coming from you. Like, I guess an easy way to sort of explain that would be to say you walk into a room and there's a given vibe in the room. And for a while I was fairly militant about not, basically saying like, oh, if someone says, oh, that makes me happy, or that makes me sad, it's like, oh, nothing makes, it's like the Tony Robbins thing, it's like the Michael Brown thing. Nothing makes you happy or sad. It's you. It's but I'm not, in any case, you could walk into a room and the room could have a bad vibe, and it's like, well, if you walked into that room, it's like, did you put the vibe there, or was the vibe already there? Now you could disregard or disagree with the idea that vibe is a thing, but in any case, so it's like, is it an addiction thing? Is it external? Or is it sort of an inspiration thing? And inspiration may be great, but then possibly I've found that it's like, well, if you follow your intuition, at least if you're being gang stalked, then it seems like you may walk right into something that or if you follow what seems to be your intuition, and maybe it's about discernment, you may walk into something where it's a gas station, and like, there are like, you know maybe three or four people outside the station, say two main ones outside, and then one guy inside, and maybe like maybe one other guy outside, whatever, however many. And it seems like they're all, or three out of the X of them are all like responding to you in a way where it's like, wait a second, I've never been here. You don't know me, or I don't imagine that you know me, and I don't know if I've seen you guys before, but each of you, as I said in, I think, the video, the propaganda period, I said the Sora period later, but I think it is the propaganda period, on my channel. It's like, I followed my intuition. It seemed to lead me into not really a trap necessarily, maybe a little bit of a spiritual trap, but it seemed to lead me into like this sort of constructed situation, or the situation where these people were somehow expecting me. So, it's like, you may want to use discernment anyway. And it's like, okay, Matt, so are you going to do the video or not? Yeah, let's do the video. So the video is "Don't Live in Fear," period, with the quotation mark. Something about the quotation mark seems like a part of it. I'm not sure. That's the way I wrote it down for today and tomorrow in my little schedule scorecard here. I have perfect schedule for today and tomorrow, and then I a perfect schedule period for each, and then I have "Don't Live in Fear," period, with the quotes around it for each. That's Monday and Tuesday. Now it's like, oh, two things, Matt. It's like, well, yeah, but if you check out the 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, he talks about how, and it's like, well, Matt, look at the title. It's like, yeah, but he does talk about how basically you want to pick a couple things, maybe, where maybe two or three things. I think he said three max, where it's like, these are the things you'd like to get done tomorrow. I think he talks about doing it for the next day, whenever it is. And these are the things you'd like to get done. And if you get these things done, you'll be satisfied with the day. Now, of course, that might be something that is ultimately a series of things that's been chunked together, such as, like, today, I also am thinking of finishing a video. And it's like that's got a lot of steps. There's a lot of gameplay footage to get. There would be a lot of editing to do. I'm not sure that I'm going to finish the video today. It's also not in my at the top of my little scorecard here. Also, quests are just suggestions, or quests are suggestions. Not that I suggest that you assign yourself or put down a bunch of quests and then just, routinely don't carry them out, because master key system, I'm not sure if it's necessarily the best thing to follow, but it may have some helpful stuff. And that book says something like, basically, if you say you're going to do something, it's weird, because like if you have a thought, sometimes it feels like, oh no, like a thought came up and it's like, okay, and then suddenly it's like you've assigned yourself something and it was a split second. I'm not sure exactly when it becomes like locked down, but they say if you say per se, but they say if you say you're going to do something, you better do it, and don't let anything stop you, because otherwise you're teaching, basically you're sending a signal to your subconscious that you're not serious about what you're going to do, and that's probably going to facilitate a pattern of failure for you in the future. And it's like, okay, well then how would we ever, once we started failing, how would we ever succeed? It's like, well, I think it's sort of about basically getting into a routine of like indeed carrying it out, and indeed getting that outcome, and then you'll be more maybe facilitated in carrying things out, rather than in being like, oh no, and then you have all this fear come up maybe or something, and suddenly it's like, well, that's just another thing I dropped. Now, I've been pretty good about that. However, um, we're not necessarily talking about that here. We're talking about don't live in fear. And that's a big one, man. That's a big one. As I said on the Medium Noble Postscripts, don't live in fear is I said it was like sort of I said it was the main idea of RPG life. Now here's the thing: electivity period, with the period bolded, that is like the word, the main, like that is the word associated with RPG life. And then associated with that is you are okay period, with the Y and the O capitalized in that. Not the Y in the okay, but the Y at the beginning of you. It's like, yeah, you are okay period, and if you're okay, then electivity period bolded, as in like it's what you're gonna do. What are you gonna do? That's what it is. You're okay. Now there's sort of, it's an interesting dichotomy here, and I thought, the you are okay is important, because if you're not okay, then you could do all sorts of things, but you might be doing them in a proverbial burning house, like in Synecdoche, New York, when the woman goes to look at the house and it's burning down as the realtor is guiding her through it. I've mentioned it before. And the woman, the realtor's giving her the little tour, and it's kind of horrifying, and they're walking through a burning house, but it's a surreal movie, so they're not dying or seemingly in too much danger. And then up from the basement comes the realtor's like 35 whatever year old son. If he's 35 or 34, then he's a little younger than me at this point. I just turned 36. But everything about this house is sort of like dingy and kind of dinky as well. It'd be a nice enough house to live in, as opposed to an apartment or something. And by the way, apartment, you are meant to be apart. You're not meant to have a bunch of you're not meant to be crammed into a freaking box and have people above and below you coming in, without you having anything to say about it. Like that's not a fucking house. That's well, clearly, right? But, or, it's, you don't have control of the whole house or whatever. But it's like that. It seems like a situation where it would be, kind of not good, like for a person. It's like you're basically in jail. One of the worst things about being in jail, it's not just not getting to do XYZ. It's not just having the prisoners, for some horrific reason, being in control of your food, even though they're there supposedly for being untrustworthy or quote unquote bad according to the government. They're there as a punishment, and yet they have control over your food and they're making it. It's like, really? That's human abuse. That's a human rights abuse. But it's not, that's a big part of it. But the probably the biggest part of it is other people. Hell is other people. And a huge thing in jail is when a new guy comes in, it's like, I hope this guy isn't going to make everything just terrible. And you don't know how long he's going to be there, right? So in any case, this woman, she's going through a house. At least it's a house. And the realtor's like, okay, well, so what do you think? Do you have anything? What do you think about the house? Or something like that. And the woman says, well, I'm just kind of concerned about dying in the fire. And it's like, yeah. So if it's electivity bolded, period, then without the you are okay, and it's not like it's not necessarily like, oh, I'm gonna. I don't. I hope it wasn't that. It's just like, oh, I'm gonna put you are okay to make it seem okay to do what you like. Do as thou wilt, right? I'm not certain I like that either. Do as thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. But at the same time, it's like there are plenty of people trying to tell you what to do, and if you abdicate your own authority, as Mark Passio talks about, that's actually an immoral thing to do. He says it's not amoral. He says it's immoral because basically following orders without analyzing what they are, basically you're kind of just allowing yourself to be used with whatever effects, basically not even considering the effects of your actions at that point, and then you become a perfect tool. So electivity, it's like, okay, well, at least you're taking the reins of your own life. That may sound satanic, that may sound X, Y, or Z, but at the very least, it's you could look at that as a responsibility thing. Scott Adams in How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big, I'm pretty sure it was that book, not Win Bigly, although whatever. He says something like, basically you want to be selfish enough to be taking care of yourself, because if you're not selfish enough to be taking care of yourself, then you're going to be a burden on other people. And so you could look at that in a really like sort of you could look at that in a way where it's classically unselfish. Now, of course, Ayn Rand has the virtue of selfishness. She didn't seem like a very good person. She liked baby killing and stuff. Apparently, she various things. She didn't seem like that caring of a person. But at the same time, you'll probably find that most of the time people are calling you selfish. It's like they've got their own agenda going on. And that might be a big part of it, or maybe the biggest part of why they're saying, well, you're selfish. It's like, oh, so if I'm being selfish, then that means, are you implying that I should be doing what you'd like me to do? And in that case, how about you do what I want you to do? Because by that standard, you are being selfish not to follow my commands or my orders, right? It's a whole like fucking mess. These things that people just accept, probably from when they were kids, and it was just parents saying this shit so that the kids to basically control their kids in a more effective manner, or to scare them into doing something, or to guilt them into doing something. It's like, oh yeah, well, don't be selfish. It's like, yeah, but what's the alternative? Is the alternative that you must follow the orders of somebody else? And in that case, who else? Apparently, France. They somebody on Substack said that France has the spirit of France's speech laws are not to protect you, but to protect others. And I commented on it, and she liked the comment. She wasn't saying that it was a good thing that those speech laws. She was, I think, saying it in a critical way. And I commented on it, and I was like, yeah, and of course, if it's to protect others, then it's to protect nobody, because it's never you. Because whoever it is, it's never to protect you. It's always to protect everybody else. But then when it gets to them, it's not to protect them either. It's to protect the people who aren't them. And so it basically it is it's saying this is to protect others. It's basically saying it's to protect nobody, because every other is their own person, right? Or you might imagine they are. And so it's like, is it just you and everyone else is important and you're the only one not protected? Or is it nobody's protected and there's just this phantom idea of others? So don't live in fear. So I felt like that was a good point to stop this, and it would have been a nice enough point to stop this, but I didn't really talk about the fear thing very much, and I think that's huge. So here you go. If you're living in a burning house, if you're living in proverbially, then it's not maybe very helpful to say, or very fun to say, like, oh, you just do what you like, or electivity. It's like, all right, well, yeah, but you'd like to take care of this, right? You'd like to make sure that you're gonna make it, and you're not gonna go down with the burning house. And so there's the dichotomy here with don't live in fear, which is, if there is any kind of threat, funny word for me to use, right? I never made a threat, by the way. I sent some angry emails facetiously, and you can check out the Max Payne, honesty is pure period scapegoat 4. And that's actually, that kind of explains my whole thing. I'd recommend watching all of them. It's a little repetitive, especially if you've heard what I say, heard some of my stuff before, but I sat through, like, I did it. I sat through like those 6 to 8 whatever hours of video footage of Max Payne and me generally talking over it. And there are some repeated points, but once you sort of like basically it's there are a couple points where it's like, oh man, like I'm getting kind of tired of this, but I kept going watching it, and especially that fourth video, but even the other videos, there's like, you know what? Actually, like I'd say, basically it was worthwhile to watch the whole thing. It's like, what? Oh man, you're saying it was worthwhile to watch your video, and it's like, yeah, well, I had a good ultimately because at a certain point I was like, yeah, I'm gonna turn. I don't know, and then it's like, you know what? No, I'm gonna persevere. I'd like to watch all of these, and I did, and it was awesome. But the fourth, if you just want to watch one of them, the fourth one explains the whole jail free speech thing, and I think it explains it about as well as you're gonna hear it. Yeah, if you're concerned about that, please watch that video, because I'm not super, like, I'm not always flattering to myself in that video. Once it gets to the part where I start talking about the Eminem rap battle, that's where it gets to my main couple of points. I kind of talk about a couple of things, and one of them is way more flattering to me, and I think way more realistic than a lot of things you might hear about me. The other one is probably something that if I ever, as I say, I think in that video or whatever it is, if I ever got famous, it would probably be something that came up and people were like, people basically like made fun of me for it. And so I get it out of the way there. I'm doing the third rap battle. And so that one's not as flattering to me, but I also explain it in a way where it's like, it's not to just justify my actions or justify myself, but it is to say, look, especially if I've been gang stalked. I don't know how long that's been going on, but even apart from that, I've been through so much fucking trauma. I've been through so much shit. And whether it's some kind of organized community thing or whatever it is, you can't, I don't know if there's much you can find about me where it's like Matt was really that bad of a guy. In any case, here you go. Let's get back to the dichotomy here. Don't live in fear, but then, okay, so don't live in fear. What about like if you're in danger or something, like spiritually in danger? What if you got someone in your house who it seems like they're so honed in on like screwing with you that they hit all the Stephanie the Seeker points. And not only that, but it seems like you can just think of something. You can think of something where it's like it's a pressure point, or that topic is kind of a pressure point around that person. And as soon as you think of it, like you'll often hear them speak up in another room, or you start to do something and you're not near them. Apparently they don't see you. Maybe they got some cameras or something, who knows, but you start to do something and then immediately it's like they perk up and they start saying shit elsewhere. It's like, or for instance, you go take a bath, and every time you go take a bath, it seems like they go right into the bathroom underneath you and stay there the entire time. Something like that. It's like somebody really fucking with you. Check out the Stephanie the Seeker thing from yesterday. It would have been March 29th. She had a live and it was really good. I'm going to say her points here, not to copy her, but to say that I think this is very helpful. And I'll give you the names of it, and then you can maybe go watch her video to see what it means. If it doesn't, if it's not super clear with just the names themselves. But yeah, basically, like, say you have a person who hits all these marks, all 5 of them. All right. So 5 signs God gives you when someone is sent to hurt you. I think that was sort of the beginning of the name of her video. And so the signs are strategic confusion, unprovoked or unwarranted attention on you when you're in a group, boundary testing and escalation, isolating you through narrative control, or isolation of you through narrative control, whatever, feeling of restraint, or essentially like the feeling of, essentially like you just get the feeling, right? Okay. So if you have someone hitting all those points, strategic confusion, unprovoked or unwarranted attention on you when you're in a group, boundary testing and escalation, uh, isolating you through narrative control or isolation of you through narrative control, feeling of restraint. If you have all those with someone, it's like, okay, so that's kind of a scary situation to be in. So it's, well, there you go, scary, right? But it's like, okay, it seems like this person is sort of a threatening presence. Like it seems like this person emotionally, even spiritually, like they may be fucking with your soul. I read something recently. Maybe I'll find the page here, but I read something recently where they were talking about reptilians, and it's like, oh, reptilians, really? It's like, look, I'm not saying that. What is this? Oh yeah, here we go. So this is Biblioteca Pleiades, BIBLIOTECAPLEYADES.net slash SUMER_ANUNNAKI REPTILES/REPTILES.htm. Now, if you want to check that out, they were saying something it's a very interesting website. It's like, oh, I don't believe in reptilians. Fine. It doesn't even have to be a reptilian context, but they were basically saying, like, they were saying in their context, if someone is a host for a reptilian or something like that, then if you're around them, just like Conversations with God talked about, where it's like if someone's vibrating to higher level and a lower level, it basically, you don't want to spend too much time around people vibrating at a lower level because they might tend to pull you down. It's unlikely that you're not going to have some effect on each other, and unless you're going to be pulling them up, they might pull you down, and either way, actually, they might rise a little bit and you might fall a little bit. And so in this one, it's like they were saying, well, and they illustrated it well. They were saying, okay, if you're near someone who's a host of a reptilian, then often, even if this person isn't like a so-called reptilian or something, if they are hosting that kind of, you could even just say that kind of vibe or whatever, or entity, then you might, they said, like, basically you don't want to spend too much time near that person because you're in danger, because any holes in your aura or any holes in like your spirit or something, they will, like, just over time they'll try to like get into them. Like they'll try to fucking penetrate them and essentially get into you. That may sound crazy. Again, I'm saying this could work on various levels, and you could look at it as a reptilian thing, or you could even look at it as just sort of a psychological thing. And you could say, well, you could separate it perhaps. I think vibe is a huge thing, actually, but you could perhaps even separate it from the vibe and say, like, even just the tone of this person's voice or what they say around you, even if they're not talking to you, like that could be that could be sort of like beating you down over time. And it might even be worse than that, in terms of, like, say it is just a vibe thing, or like, for example, say they do the creeping thing where they're under the like, you have a bathroom above their bathroom or something, just like being in jail, by the way, and you're in a bunk bed above somebody else, and it's like just them being there. It feels like they're kind of like eating away at you, and it's like, well, Matt, that's crazy. It's like, all right, well then, why would somebody do that? Like, if somebody were to do that, I'm not saying they would. It seems like somebody, might have done that with me, but if somebody were to do that, like to just specifically kind of lurk underneath you whenever you go take a bath, they end up being in there and they end up just lurking under you, like, silently. It's like, why are they doing that? Like, if they were to do that, what's the purpose? And it's like, oh, maybe they're listening for what you say or whatever. It's like, perhaps, or perhaps just them being there is doing something. Now, all this aside, there's a book called The Key by Whitley Strieber, that I did read in jail, actually, but I bought it after I got out as well. And it said something like, well, if any person, and I'm not saying this is necessarily the case. In fact, even Whitley, he said basically the book is supposed to be based on a conversation that he had with some mysterious stranger at a motel one time or something. You could believe it or not, take it or leave it. He wrote Communion, etc., which I think became the movie Fire in the Sky. But he's a fairly famous, like, alien related writer. And of course, apparently the government just made aliens.gov. They registered that domain name. So, even if you want to just go pure mainstream on this one, a lot of mainstream sources would be like, well, aliens, so it's like, okay, whatever. I'm actually, interestingly enough, I haven't been that big into aliens for a while, because I've been considering that kind of like maybe a facade or some bullshit to lead you away from like other stuff. In any case, and I liked aliens when I was a kid too. Be ye like little children, maybe aliens are more important, or maybe aliens would be a bigger thing to look into than I think. In any case, in that book, the guy was telling, or the guy or the alien or the thing or whatever was telling Whitley, like, hey, if there were a person, and this, I guess this was from Whitley's memory. I don't know if he said he had gotten some recording of it. Basically, if there were a person who who were just to let go of all fear, like just like literally, like totally be without fear, it would save the entire planet. I think he said, like, literally, I think he said just for a second, maybe he even said just for an instant, but he said, like, if someone were to let go of all fear, and by the way, RPG Life, could I let go of all fear? Could I let go of all fear? If someone were to basically like let go of all fear for a second and not have any fear within them or something, then apparently, at least according to that book, it would save everybody on the planet. Like that would be enough. And that's a huge statement. And it's like, oh well, yeah, what? It's a huge statement in a book about him meeting some guy in a motel. And even if he did meet this guy, it's like, what? He's gonna fucking believe him just because the guy had a strange vibe or whatever it is. It's like, look, it's like hearsay, and then even the hearsay you don't necessarily believe in. It's like, look, I'm just saying that was an interesting thing to read. And don't live in fear is what I have written, other than perfect schedule period, for today and tomorrow. And I think that's a huge thing, because if you find yourself suffering, and I would ask you to look into this for yourself, to look at this. If you find yourself suffering, you'll probably find that you're in fear. In fact, I'm not sure this, and this goes to A Course in Miracles, by the way, and they have their own "You Are Okay" thing. They say, and at the beginning of it, and Eckhart Tolle has talked about this line, but they say they have two lines, and then there's a third line sort of summing it up. They're like, nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God, or therein lies the peace of God, whatever it is. It's an interesting statement. You know why? Because it's like, okay, well, basically, no, and then they go on in that book, and they're like, it's basically love or fear. Like there are two things, like fear, and I guess fear is an illusion or whatever to them. And it's a powerful book too. If you're looking at vibes, or you're looking at like how you feel after reading some spiritual stuff, that book is one of the most powerful ever. I had some weird experiences when I bought it, actually, but in any case, the original version I bought, I think I might have thrown it away, and I got a new one, whatever. In any case, and the new one actually is the one that I got delivered to me in jail. It's coming back to that, right? But don't live in fear. Basically, if you're thought say if you are afraid, if you're suffering, if you're having any bad time at all, what it is, as Eckhart Tolle kind of says, etc. And I'm not saying all these people are good. Eckhart Tolle, having a reference for Zbigniew Brzezinski in his book, The Power of Now. Zbigniew Brzezinski, really, for some World War II stat? I've talked about that. It's like, that's bizarre. I don't think I've ever heard anyone else talk about that. It's like, really? And then in the audiobook, the woman, there's a woman and a man. The man sounds like Keanu Reeves, actually, but the woman says, like, we were literally compelled to publish this. We were literally compelled to publish this. And that's the book where Eckhart Tolle, famous worldwide spiritual teacher, is referencing Zbigniew Brzezinski, father of Mika Brzezinski on Morning Joe, and who had a famous feud with Donald Trump. But not only that, Zbigniew was apparently like a presidential advisor, and he wrote a book that, what, I think it was either Between Two Ages or The Grand Chessboard or something, that came out in the 90s, supposedly. And it said something that seemed to basically predict an event that happened in 2001. I'm just saying, there's a lot to unpack with Eckhart Tolle. But basically, if you're having a bad time, if you're in suffering, then I think it might be that it's mostly fear. And because here's the thing, it's like, if you're in suffering, unless it's physical pain, and L. Ron Hubbard would say it is all physical pain. And I'm not even saying that that's not the case, but even if you say you're in the physical pain of fear, um, or in the physical pain of suffering of any kind, I think you're going to find that usually it's not about what's happening, and it's not about like you necessarily being even protected or not. Because as people sort of cliche say these days, and I've had this happen to me, like if you get into a car accident, like things might slow down, and in that moment, like you're not necessarily afraid. Like it's more of like a neutral thing. Like I had a guy like fucking fly. It was like a late night, and I think the roads were kind of icy, and it was on the highway, and luckily nothing worse happened. But I had a guy freaking basically like careen left into the fucking middle of the fucking, like into the divider in the middle of the highway. He was fine, but I didn't have basically like it seemed like everything slowed down, and I did end up hitting his car, but luckily I didn't run right into fucking him because that probably would have been a huge deal for me and for him. But luckily I hit the back of his car. My dad was mad about it happening. It's like, oh really? Like he dropped like I called to tell him the next morning after I got where I was going and woke up or something. He dropped the fucking, like he dropped the phone and like yelled or something. It's like, really, like the car you gave me and somebody fucking hits the fucking middle of the highway, and then I hit the back of the car, and miraculously, like I'm not hurt, the other guy's not hurt, and seemingly, and it's fine, and insurance is gonna like give me something for it because it wasn't my fault, and you're gonna get mad at me. Like fuck you, dude, really. Like, and I hate that phrase fuck you these days. I guess it's good enough not to like that phrase anyway, but I've heard way too many times another person in my life just saying like fuck you, like in sort of this anesthetized, zombified, whatever kind of way, and just like this nasty, like, but I mean in a righteous way, because I think there's a big difference between righteous and not. Check out the Max Payne 4 video for that I mentioned earlier. Honesty is Pure, Scapegoat 4. I talk about like, like when you're getting on somebody's nerves or when you're not getting on somebody's nerves, I think how you're coming to what you're saying or doing might have a big part of it. And like you can sort of tell, like with a tone, like, oh, somebody said something in an insulting way, like you look nice today versus you look nice today, something like that. Well, even that sounds a little like insulting. It's like, well, do I usually not look nice? That sounds a little surprised, but it's like a tone can do a lot. And so I think like righteous versus mocking or unrighteous, I think there might be a hugely different energy there. And I think a lot of the hell that I've been through is people like hitting me with unrighteous tones and stuff like that. You check out that video for more on it. But what I'm saying here is don't live in fear, right? Don't live in fear because basically, what is it? Going back to the electivity thing, going back to taking responsibility for your life, is it you who's going to do something, or are you going to follow some idea usually of what someone else wants you to do, whatever, even just the culture. And you could like criticize the culture all day, and then you'll still be like, oh yeah, but I'm a failure. It's like, maybe you're not a failure. Maybe everyone else is a failure, and the more money you have, the more likely it is that you're just a total personal failure and you've been a horrible person in some regards. In any case, if you're living in fear, that's your suffering. There is your suffering.